Everybody, welcome back to another edition of Inside the Wild here on Inside the Zone with Mateo. So glad you're choosing to spend your next couple minutes here, hopefully entertained by the content that I present to you. Speaking of presenting, let me present this slideshow for y'all so hopefully y'all can see it in a second. But yeah, it's Inside the Wild as the Minnesota Wild. They're going to be finishing up their season, their NHL season here for the 2025-2026 season coming up tonight at home against the Anaheim Ducks. I think they're resting most of their stars. But today is all talking. We're talking about, we're recapping the season, but also looking ahead to, as you can see, revenge or repeat. I'll explain a little bit more in a second. So without further ado, let's go back over here. Don't know why it always does that. But yes, this is season 2, episode 32 here on our channel. Inside the Zone with Mateo is our sports podcast channel, and then I have little mini podcasts within the channel. This is the hockey one because it's Inside the Wild. I cover all Minnesota sports here in this kind of podcast rule, et cetera, et cetera. But let me stop yapping. Let's get right to Mateo's Show batting order. For those who do not know, Mateo's Show batting order, basically our roadmap that I use across the channel here on every single show. If you'd like to sponsor this segment, let me know. Send me an email, send me a DM on X. I guess you could probably do that as well. And we can get that all figured out. But 3 things on the batting order today. We got the season review, the playoff preview, and then a very early series prediction. Who do I have winning the series? Well, stay tuned to the end of the episode to find that out. So without further ado, let's get into the review. And we're going to just basically kind of get you caught up of what's going on with the Minnesota Wild. If you only pay attention to hockey during the playoffs, this is the perfect time for you. But also, if you just want to, if you're a Wild fan, a casual Wild fan, you want a recap of what kind of they've done this season, well, this is the place for you. So without further ado, let's get into the review. And number one, the first thing we're going to talk a little bit about. We got 1 game left. So technically the season's not over, but, I'm recording this about 3:30 Eastern Tuesday. So in about 3 to 4 hours or so, they'll play their last game of the season. Most of these starters are not going to be playing. But yeah, they're playing the Anaheim Ducks actually at Grand Casino Arena, their final home game of the season, which should be actually really interesting to see, who tunes in. I mean, that's the thing. Don't necessarily, I've been learning this, don't buy tickets at the start of the season to buy tickets at the end of the season because a lot of players might not be playing. But if you are, you're going to probably get a lot of fan appreciation. They always do that stuff at the end of the season. There's going to be some cool stuff. You're going to get to see a lot of the prospects, which should be really cool. I did want to see the lineups, like who's actually playing, because they do have the projected lineups here. The Anaheim Ducks are playing for something. They're playing for a playoff position in their division, so they're going to be playing all their players. So again, expect the Wild to probably lose today. Wallstedt is going to be starting tonight after Philip Gustafson, I think, gave up 5 or 6 goals last night against the St. Louis Blues. But here's a quick look at what the projected lineup's going to look like for tonight. Against the Anaheim Ducks, you got Trenin, Urov, and Tarasenko as your first line. Then you got Johansson, Hunter Height, and Bobby Brink as your second line. So you get to see Hunter Height, which is going to be insane. I'm looking forward to him. Maybe just maybe he's going to be a franchise center. Who knows? But then Nico Sturm, Michael McCarron, Nick Foligno going to play the third line. And then Robbie Fabry, Ben Jones, and Nicholas Abu-Kabul will be playing on the fourth line. You got Viking Gustafsson Nyberg, who actually did make his debut against the Blues. He's going to play again. He's going to play on the top line with Jared Spurgeon. It looks like Faber's going to play with Middleton, but again, that he's a game time decision. Then Damian Hunt and Matt Kierstead are going to be playing on the third pair. Right now, Brodin, Zuccarello, Ek, Bogosian, Petry, Boldy, Foligno, Hartman, Hughes, and Kaprizov are going to be scratched, but I would probably... I'm guessing Faber is going to be scratched as well tonight, but we'll see what happens. This is just projected, about 4 hours away from puck drop, if anybody cares. But anyway, let's get back to the slideshow, if you will. That's what's coming up tonight. Again, Anaheim's playing for a position in their division. I believe they're in the 3rd spot right now currently. We can pull that up, I guess, so you can kind of take a quick look at what they're playing for, because they are playing for something. All the playoff spots are locked in. However, here, as you can see, Anaheim currently, with actually 2 games left. They have today, and then I think they play Thursday when the season ends 2 games left. They still have a legitimate shot at winning the 1 seed in their division. So if they were to win tonight, and they probably will, they'll go to 92 points. If the Golden Knights, I don't know when the Golden Knights play here. I didn't know we were going to talk a little bit about the Ducks, but why not? Let's talk a little bit about the Ducks. The Golden Knights. They have 1 game left, I believe, in their season, and they play tomorrow against the Seattle Kraken. So if they win, they go to 95 points and they win their division. If they get 1 point, however, Anaheim and the Oilers will still have a chance to catch them. Oilers have 1 more game, so they have to win their next game, and then they need to hope that the Golden Knights actually lose and don't get a point. They just lost to shootouts against the Avalanche yesterday. They're going to be playing Thursday against the Canucks, so that should be a win hypothetically. You could see the Oilers getting to 93 points, but then it ultimately depends on the tiebreakers and stuff. But Anaheim, as you can see, still has a lot to play for. The Kings currently 1 point back of the Ducks, and the Ducks and Kings still have 2 games to play. So the Kings could still technically jump into the 3 seed if the Ducks don't win. So again, the Ducks will have to be playing for something. They're playing most of their starters, or I think all of their starters. So that's a little bit of what's coming up tonight if you're watching this on Tuesday, April 14th. But other than that, you probably don't care, and you probably fast forward or just, didn't really pay attention. But anyway, the Minnesota Wild coming into today, before they played their last game of the season, 45 wins, 24 losses, and 12 overtime/shootout losses. 102 points, a very good season. Over 100 points is always very impressive, especially in the National Hockey League. I wanted to see in regards to last year, because last year we did make the playoffs. We were a wild card team, and we played the Vegas Golden Knights. The Minnesota Wild had 97 points last year. They had the same number of wins from last season this season. They actually, so that last season they were 45, 30, and 7. This season they've got into overtime more, and they've gotten at least a point in more of those games. So really, that's really intriguing. So right now, coming into the game, we only have 5 more points than last season. And I thought last season was kind of a bad season, but it's interesting for sure. I mean, they had 15 more wins than losses, which is, 30 points, which is noticeable. But still, I thought that was very interesting to note. But yeah, a pretty dang good season for your Minnesota Wild. They were hunting. They could have tried for home ice for sure. But ultimately, that Dallas Stars loss a couple days ago kind of cut that short. But anyway, that's their record for now. Now let's get to some of their player statistics. Kaprizov leading the charge, leading the team in 89 total points right now. He's most likely going to end on there. He's not going to play again. So 45 goals, 44 assists, 1 point away from 90 points of the season, which is a very, very good year. Good stat line to really just put up, right? In an NHL season. One of the league's best players. He's going to be the league's highest paid player, bearing something else that happens in the off season. Coming into the next season, there will be an increase in salary cap, but still sign him to that 8-year, $15 million a year or something like that. But some more stats on Kirill Kaprizov. He was like plus 10. He only had 28 penalty minutes, which is one of the lowest on the team. Which is, by the way, if you kind of check that out, if you do the math, that's only 14 2-minute minors. I don't think he had anything more than that. So only 14 penalties in a span of 78 games. I think that's for sure manageable. Obviously, you wouldn't want him to be penalized at all, but that's, every 5 games he was getting called for a penalty, maybe 6, depending on how you do the math. But that's still, something, you want to make known. Kirill Kaprizov averaged 22 minutes a night, which is very great. He had 20 power play goals, which was actually not the most. Sorry, that power play, is that power play goals? Yeah, power play goals. Yeah, he had 19 power play goals, which was the most for the team. So almost half of his goals were on the power play, which, he's so deadly on the power play. Hopefully that's going to be a good thing for the playoffs, because how much penalty kills always, power plays and special teams always kills us in the postseason. So maybe we have a workable power play unit, especially now with Quinn Hughes. But yeah, he shot the puck well. He was playing a really good season. Again, leads the team in points, leads the team in goals, and ultimately, a really dang good player. So that's kind of what his season is looking like in about 78 games. So he actually did remain healthy for a good majority of the season. I think he missed 2 games due to injury, and then he's sat out the last game, and then probably going to sit out this game. So he's going to miss 4 games on the season, which is not terrible at all, especially when you're in one of the hardest leagues in the sports world for your body, especially. The other superstar on the offensive side is, of course, Matt Boldy. He also had 40-plus goals. Yeah, 2 40-plus goal scorers is absolutely insane. Boldy had 42 goals, 43 assists, 85 points, so 4 points fewer than Kirill Kaprizov. He was a plus 18, though, which even if he wasn't getting points, he was a plus 18, which is absolutely insane. Averaged about 21 minutes a night off, on the ice. 11 power play goals, but he had also 20 power play assists, which is absolutely great. The penalty kill. Also, he was great at, but power play, special teams in general is just going to be so important when we talk about the playoff preview, because ultimately that's where they end up getting killed most of the time in the playoffs. As we take as we'll take a little look about that. We'll take a trip down memory lane, if you will. But Matt Boldy, really good season. Obviously, he's still young. He's only making $7 million a year, which is really cheap for him because he could be. You could make a good case that he should be one of the top 10 highest paid players in the entire NHL. You could make an argument, probably a good argument, that the Minnesota Wild have 3 players on their team that should be making top 10 money wise. If you think so, maybe even if you want to say Faber once should be making that, I think he's going to get a really good deal. So we'll see how all of this money works out in the offseason. But we're not going to talk about the offseason. We're talking about this season and the playoffs because that's all we're focusing on today. Getting ahead of myself a couple months down the road. On the defensive side, obviously the big news: Quinn Hughes coming for about half a season. How many total games did he play? If you want to know, like how many games? Well, he played 48 games. You might be saying, well, only 48? Well, look at his stat line. 5 goals, sure. It's okay. He's a defenseman. 48 assists. He was averaging an assist per game. I think he had 1 game where he didn't have any points. Other than that, all the other 47 games, he had at least 1 point, multiple points normally. Quinn Hughes has just been a dog, and he is definitely going to be a big difference maker here when we're talking about the playoffs. +6 only in his 48 games, but still, you know how good he is, and we all know how good Quinn Hughes is. And it's just crazy that Quinn freaking Hughes is on the Minnesota Wild. Yeah, I don't think the Minnesota Wild have had this good of a defenseman really ever. He's already broken a bunch of Minnesota Wild single season defenseman records, and he's only been here for about half a season. So again, that is saying something as well. But we don't just have one superstar defenseman, we have another in Brock Faber. Now, he's not as offensive. He's still really good defensively, a +18, but 15 goals. Shockingly, 15 goals for a defenseman is crazy, and 36 assists. That's Brock Faber with 51 points. Yes, he was also a +18, just like Boldy. So people weren't scoring, and he was scoring, and he's just going to be so important as we talk more about the playoffs because, this top group of Hughes and Faber, man, it's going to be good. It's going to be fun to watch. You got the speed and skill of, both of them, but also the defensive capability of both of them. They both contribute to the offensive side. Maybe Hughes a little more than Faber, but still, this top duo is going to be insane. And then you can look at the depth, and you got Brodin, Spurgeon, Bogosian with playoff experience. Middleton's a big presence. They bring in Jeff Petrie from the Florida Panthers for experience. And so overall, you take a look at this defensive core, not just Faber and Hughes, even though they headline it, it's going to be good. I just wanted to say, you combine Hughes and Faber, they are going to end up having over 100 points. That's 20 goals for combined for 2 defensemen. And then for the assists, you take a look, and if you do the math correctly, I hope I'm doing this in my head correctly. Yes, 84 assists combined with them, 20 goals. That's 104 points for 2 defensemen is absolutely insane. You don't really see that unless it's like someone like a Cale Makar or someone like that, but we know how good Cale Makar is, so you're putting yourself right into that conversation if you're young Brock Faber or also superstar Quinn Hughes. It wasn't just a superstar-led team because you had 8 15-plus goal scorers, 9 players over 40 points. And let me read you the list of those. Obviously, Hartman headlines this as Ryan Hartman had 23 goals and 20 assists. Tarasenko, 23 goals and 23 assists. Marcus Johansson, there's his 15 goals, as well as Brock Faber has 15 goals, but then Johansson has 33 assists. You had Joel Eriksson X, 19 goals and 32 assists. Mats Zuccarello, 15 goals and 39 assists. And you can continue. Yurov had 11 goals and 15 assists. He did kind of stop playing a little bit. He got into a hot streak, but they kind of died down. I think if he would have been given a little bit more chances, he definitely could have made that 15 goal mark. And maybe he scores 4 goals tonight against the Ducks, and then he has 15 goals. But when you just go up and down that lineup, you have so much depth on the offensive side and also on the defensive side. I talked about the defense very briefly, but 8 15-plus goal scorers is absolutely insane. You had 8 people, and by the way, one of them was a defenseman in Brock Faber, and probably if you would have had Quinn Hughes for the whole season, he probably would have made it 9. It's just insane. You have depth. It's not just Kaprizov and Boldy getting the start scoring. It's Zuccarello, it's Hartman, it's Tarasenko, it's Eriksson Ek. It's just this team might be one of the deepest teams Minnesota Wild fans have seen in a long time, and I'm really interested. I'm really interested to see how it turns over to the playoffs, but also how it moves forward. When they decide on contract extensions and things to that extent. The only other, group of players we haven't mentioned yet, though, is the goaltenders. So we're going to talk very briefly about the goaltenders right here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about them in a little bit later. Excuse me. The goalies combined, Philip Gustafsson and Jesper Wallstedt, they both had pretty dang good seasons. It's kind of died down recently, which is a little bit concerning, but we'll talk about that later. They still put up really good stats. Add their stats together, divided by 2. Their average goals against average was 2.64 goals a game. Their combined save percentage was 91%. They each had 4 shutouts. I mean, it's just those stats says it all. They're stopping 91% of the shots they save. They're letting in less than 3 goals a game, and then with that firepower of this offense, that's pretty dang good. Now, if it was like under 2 goals a game, that would be elite, and that would be on a different level. But obviously, they have struggled. Both Philip Gustafsson and Jesper Wallstedt have struggled as of late. So, their stats are a little higher than it should be. I think, there was a moment, probably around February or January, even to that extent, where both of them, they were leading. They were the top 2 goalies in the league statistically as well, as not just as performing. People were saying, oh yeah, they're really good. They're maybe the 2 best goalies in the league. But statistically, it was showing, goals against average, like just over 2, save percentage close to 95. But obviously things died down. It's a long season. The NHL teams are still NHLers, of course, and they also know how to score. But, I don't think, we were expecting these 2 to be as good as they have been. But now when they kind of go back to their mid to a little higher than mid self these last couple weeks, it's a little concerning, and it has sparked a lot of controversy on who should start game 1 of the postseason. I think you still got to go Philip Gustafsson. You don't just do that. We know what happened with Cam Talbot a couple years ago and Marc-Andre Fleury. You don't just do that. You give Gus a couple chances. If he absolutely plays awful, if he plays completely bad, just does not track pucks well or anything like that, then you make the switch. But you go to Gustafsson and say, no, you are our number 1 guy. But I think both of them know they're both going to get a shot at some point in some time, especially if you're thinking that this team is capable of making a Stanley Cup run, which everybody in the state of hockey is hoping for. So yeah, that was kind of the review. Now we move on, though, to the preview. That's probably why you clicked on this episode. It's what the thumbnail kind of hinted at. But yeah, here we go. Wild versus Stars, take 3. Man, that game a couple of days ago gave us a lot of good pictures and highlights to go into all these hype videos and stuff, including this picture right here with Fasca. And I don't remember. Is that Zuki? I can't tell who that is. 30. I think that's Zuki, but it doesn't look like Zuki. I don't know. But you're saying, well, what is take 3? Well, hold up. The Minnesota Wild and the Dallas Stars are going to be meeting again in the first round for the not third straight year, but for the 3rd time in their franchise's history. Of course, if you guys don't remember, the Minnesota Wild used to be the Minnesota North Stars, and they moved over to Dallas, and, they've had our number, if you will. They both played each other 2000. They played each other in 2016 and 2023, both in the first round, and both ended up with the Dallas Stars beating the Minnesota Wild in 6 games, taking the series 4 games to 2. Now, I thought I'd, share a couple little notes about this because the Minnesota Wild, as we know, if you've been following the Wild, if you've been a fan of the Wild for the last couple seasons and for, maybe their entire franchise history dating back to 2000, they've not had the best postseason success. And in fact, they have not gotten out of the first round since 2015. Okay, they beat the St. Louis Blues in the Western Conference first round in 6 games, right? They did that in 2015. The following year, they lost to the Dallas Stars 4 games to 2 in 2016. That was the starting point of 9 straight first round exits. You got 2016 to the Stars, 2017 to the Blues, 2018 to the Jets, 2019 they missed the playoffs, but 2020 they lost to the Canucks, 2021 they lost to the Golden Knights in the first round, 2022 they lost to the Blues in the first round, then the Stars again in 2023, and then 2025 against the Golden Knights again. So that's technically 8 straight first round exits. But you get what I'm saying. They haven't won a playoff series in over a decade. Yes, 2016 was over a decade. Sorry, 2015 was over a decade ago. And it's just not been great. It's not been great. In the franchise's 25-year history, we have only won 3 playoff series total. 2023 against the Avalanche, 2023 against the Canucks, 2014 against the Colorado Avalanche, and then 2015 against the St. Louis Blues. Only 4 playoff series victories. 2 where they reached the Western Conference Finals in 2003, and then you had the 2014 Avalanche, and then the 2015 Blues. But other than that, the Stars have had their number. So it's Stars versus Wild, take 3. Coming up Saturday or Sunday. We don't know exactly when they're going to play yet. But of course, for those of you who don't know, I will probably, Timberwolves come first. So if the Timberwolves are playing at the same time as the Wild, I'm going to be streaming live play-by-play and reaction and breakdown of the Timberwolves game. But if the Wild and Wolves do not play at the same time, I will for sure be bringing you live play-by-play and reaction for at least a couple of the Wild games. But of course, it's going to be mostly Timberwolves, but I'm going to do for sure a little bit of the Wild. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell button on so you never ever miss any of those streams. And there's going to be so much content coming out, guys. Literally, I'm wrapping up school in the next couple of weeks here. So if these 2 teams, if the Timberwolves, if the Wild, get out of the first round, expect tons of content, and it's going to be great. Can we get to 200 subscribers by the end of the first round? That's a lot to ask, but maybe it's possible. So again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And now let's continue with this preview here. Like, what's different? What, so many people think this team is different. Well, obviously Quinn Hughes has a lot to do with it, but also I kind of talked a little bit about it just a little bit ago. This depth is absolutely insane. The depth this team has is crazy. It's absolutely crazy, okay? Like, you have so many people that could be on this team, could be in the starting lineup for game 1, but a lot of them are not going to play because this team is so deep, right? It's so deep. And we're gonna pull up a little graph thing, little thing that not a graph, but like something we can manage, right? Right here. Kirill Kaprizov, Ryan Hartman, Matt Zuccarello is most likely going to be your first line. Then Johansson, Eriksson, Boldy. Then you got Foligno, Yurov, Tarasenko, Trenton McCarron, Bobby Brink. I actually don't think this is going to be it. Hold on. Can I edit this? Oh, wait. Hold up. Oh, boy. Sorry about that. I wasn't logged in. I don't know what was going on. But anyway, this depth is just crazy. Like, look at this. This is most likely what the starting lineup's going to be for game 1. Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, Johansson, Eriksson, Boldy, Trenin, Yurov, and Tarasenko, and then the Foligno brothers, and Michael McCarron. Then you got Hughes, Faber, Spurgeon, Brodin, Middleton, and Bogosian, Gustafsson, Wallstead. But Jeff Petrie, he can definitely play. He has experience. Sure, he's older, and I don't think he's going to play as much, but he can play for a couple games. He has depth. Bobby Brink, a young player, he's going to probably most likely play a little bit. Nico Sturm for sure can play in the playoffs. He even has he's a Stanley Cup champion with Florida. Then you have some of these guys who probably won't play, but still, that's 2 forwards and 1 defenseman where, they could end up in the lineup. Obviously, this is probably what it's going to look like in the long end term, but you have so much depth and you have so much size, which was something I believe you were missing a couple seasons ago, 2023 specifically. You have the scoring, you have the defense. It's one of the best defensive cores in the entire NHL. And the goalies are also very good. So, right, what's different? Well, this team is just ultimately way deeper than it was a couple years ago, and for sure from 2016. I think Spurgeon and Brodin were actually on that team in 2016. So was Foligno, I think. But other than that, this is a whole new team with new stars, new veterans, new goalies, and it's going to be insane, right? You have Quinn Hughes. He's a big X factor. You have so many X factors. Who do I think is going to be the ultimate X factor? I think it's got to be Hughes and Faber. How much do they take over? Obviously, you got to show some respect, and you got to say and acknowledge the goalies have to be good. But I think at the end of the day, if Quinn Hughes and Brock Faber, I think they have the ability to take over the game. Obviously, Kaprizov and Boldy, they're going to do their thing. Hartman's another big X factor. Like, you keep going up and down the lineup, but you could make a case why each person is an X factor. This fourth line can really set the feel, set the game, set the tone. That was the word I was looking for. Golly, this Russian third line, Trenin, Yurov, and Tarasenko. We know they can score. We know they can move the puck around. Same thing with the Boldy, Johansson, Eriksson, Ekline, and then we know what the first line is capable of. Each defense, has veterans and speed and just great, solid defensive minds as well as great skaters. This team is just so deep. So I think in general, that is the biggest difference. What exactly is, the difference, right? Because, we're trying to break down this series. We're trying to figure out, well, who's going to win this series? Well, this team is just so much different. It's so much more deep. However, is it enough? I'm going to answer that in a little bit later. We talked about what's different, what's the same. They're still playing the Stars, who are relatively the same team. They're playing the same goalie, who is one heck of a goalie, and he's gotten even better. Jake Ottinger is having one of the best seasons of his career. Yes, I know he was born in Minnesota, so he's going to be playing his hometown team yet again. He played it in 2023. He played out of his mind. That's, I think, in my opinion, one of the major reasons the Dallas Stars won that series in 2023. What's also the same? Philip Gustafson's your goaltender. Marc-Andre Fleury played, I think, 1 or 2 games last time we played the Stars in the playoffs in 2023. But other than that, it was Philip Gustafson, okay? It was Philip Gustafson literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 6 games. And what did Philip Gustafson do? He allowed 3 straight games, for 3 straight games, games 4, 5, and 6. You had a 2-1 series lead after a crazy 5-1 win at home in Game 3. You lost Game 4, you lost Game 5, you lost Game 6. In that stretch, Philip Gustafson allowed 3 goals, 4 goals, and 4 goals. Game 5, you were shut out. I don't think being shut out's a problem because, by the way, the Minnesota Wild have been the only team that have not been shut out all season, which that's an insane stat as well. Sure, the goal scoring might not have been there from games 4, 5, and 6 in 2023. But the goaltending wasn't there either. Game 5, you were shut out because Ottinger played out of his mind. He should have had a shutout. I was kind of reading a little bit about it, watching some of the highlights from Game 6. He should have had a shutout in Game 6. So sure, the offense went quiet, but it went quiet because Jake Ottinger stole the game. And ultimately, I was talking about this, in one of the other episodes, in the other Wild episodes we did on the podcast here, like the top 10 most important players for a playoff run. We talked about this with my dad, too. He was, my special guest, which, by the way, if you'd like to be a guest on this show, you can also send me a DM on X or use the contact form on my website, which is, you can read articles and also you can have all these links to all these other different podcasts. But anyway, that's a side note. We were talking about, the top 10, right? We presented each of our top 10. It's a great episode. Go watch it. I'll maybe even link it in the description. But a goaltender we were talking about can steal you a series. I personally didn't have Gustafsson in my top 5, but he did. My dad did. And it's a legitimate, it's a good pick. So it's a legitimately good pick because we've seen what Ottinger can do against us. And he, frankly, stole that game, a couple nights ago in Dallas, which we were technically playing for home ice. In a game that mattered, both goalies did not have the best game. But Ottinger made the saves when it counted, and Gustafsson did not, and that's the ultimate reason the Minnesota Wild lost that game. It's the reason they lost the series, because Ottinger stole them in the game. It's the same goalie matchup. Gustafsson, Ottinger. Sure, are we going to see a little Casey DeSmith and Jesper Wallstedt? Possibly. And I think if I were betting, which I don't bet, and I don't recommend betting because it's not a great thing to do. I would definitely say, if there was something saying, is Wallstedt or Casey DeSmith going to play in the postseason? I'm leaning toward Wallstedt. I think, as I said earlier, Gustafsson and Wallstedt are both going to have their opportunity. Casey DeSmith, I think the only way he comes into a game for Dallas is if the previous game, the Wild score like 7 goals on Ottinger. I think they're going to keep Ottinger for the entire series. Maybe, of course, if he's sick or something, or if he gets injured, right? But that if everybody stays healthy, the only reason Ottinger wouldn't start a game in the playoffs, to at least, from what makes sense to me, is if he allows like 6 goals in a game. But other than that, you're going to have to deal with Jake Ottinger, who's one heck of a goaltender, and that's ultimately the same. And that's, the major thing, which, we can talk about how deep our team is. But if the goaltending does not help you, and if the other goalie, in this case, Jake Ottinger, if he shows up in the clutch moments, steals your shots away, saves all your shots, provides your team hope and a spark, one save can change the entire game. And for me, that's what's the same, and that's a big factor into me choosing who wins this series. So as much as this team is deep, and I want to see this team win, we'll figure it out. I don't know if you know who I'm leaning toward, but the final part of this episode, and yes, it's a little shorter of an episode, but I think y'all like the shorter episodes anyway, the prediction. History almost never lies. And it certainly is against the Minnesota Wild, right? They have just been, decimated, beaten. They've just been killed by the playoffs. The first round hates the Minnesota Wild. And on top of that, 2 series against the Dallas Stars they've played against, both in the first round, both ended 4-2. So for this reason, for the reason where I don't know if the goalies are good enough to steal the Wild the game, Stars in 6 is my prediction. 3 times is the charm, they say. That could mean, maybe 3rd time's the charm for the Wild. But history, I think, is just going to it always tends to repeat itself. And, not just by the Stars winning the series, but repeating the games as well. This Minnesota team is definitely good enough to win a couple games. I could even see this. I could see this series going 7, right? I could see that going 7. But for the storylines, for it to all fit with the things, all the things of the past, I'm doing 6. But I could for sure see this series going 7. I think it's going to be one of the most fun series we're going to see in the first round. Similar to the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets, which I'll have more content about that coming out later in the week. Let me know, though, in the comments down below who you think wins this series, who the X Factor is, and so much more. Let me know. We'll get a little conversation going for sure. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell button on so you never miss any episodes here on the channel. And just a quick look at what's coming up. Episodes come out weekly here on the channel. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, I kind of rotate through all the sports. It's going to be a lot of basketball and hockey content now because of the playoffs, but then we'll get more baseball content and more NFL content as, news breaks. We got the NFL draft coming up. The Minnesota Twins, don't know how they're so hot, but they are. And so we're going to get some more shows talking about the Twins and the Vikings, as well as the NFL draft, and so much more to do with all those sports. Probably in a little bit, but right now we got to all focus on the playoffs. The NHL, NBA playoffs all start Saturday, April 18th. So much content. I will for sure be streaming the first Timberwolves game. That's going to be 2:30 Central Standard Time. Probably start at around 2, so 3 Eastern. Live play-by-play and reaction. We upgraded my streaming software just a little bit. But for those who also don't know, I try to do almost daily shorts, whether it's reactions to things, just my quick takes on things, or also if it's like, can I build a 17-0 NFL team or 82-0 NBA team, in 60 seconds or something like that. Kingdom Competitors premieres every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern, where I take a look at Christian athletes because I like to keep God at the center of what I do, because as you'll see in a second, I close every episode with something related to God, because obviously as a Christian, as a believer, I want to keep him at the center of everything I do. And again, for those who do not know, I have a website where I kind of do some articles and stuff like that. Let me go check it out. The link is in the description. Read an article. Give it a good comment. It's free to sign up. No money asked whatsoever. So go ahead and check that out. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it through the entire episode, comment. History repeats itself. Comment that if you've made it through the entire episode, and also comment all your takes, your reactions to all my takes that I splittered out here in these last half hour or so. Thank you guys so much for watching one more time. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Have a great day. Don't forget to keep God first, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.